Over 280,000 of you watched part 1, and what I showed you, how Iran erases its black population and how Israel marginalizes its black citizens, hit a nerve that no other channel has touched. But that video was made before the worst of this war unfolded. Since then, things have gotten worse, much worse. And what I am about to show you in part 2 is not history, it is not analysis, it is happening right now, as in this week. In Israel, during Iranian missile attacks, Ethiopian Jewish families ran to a bomb shelter to save their lives. They were met at the door by extremists who spat on them and tried to block them from entering. Black Jews fleeing missiles were spat on at the door of the only thing that could save their children. In Iran, the southern provinces, where the largest Afro-Iranian communities live, have been hit by strikes that have killed over 160 people, including scores of children in a single school. And not one international news outlet has asked what is happening to the black population in those provinces. This is part 2, and it is worse than part 1. I have started a WhatsApp channel where I share what YouTube buries, the stories they do not want trending. The link is in the pinned comment. Join now, because this is the content they suppress. Let me start with what happened in Jerusalem. This single incident tells you everything you need to know about what it means to be black in Israel during a war. When Iran launched its retaliatory missile strikes on Israel, hundreds of ballistic missiles were aimed at cities across the country. Millions of Israelis ran to bomb shelters. In Jewish neighborhoods, most families have private safe rooms built into their homes. In newer buildings, reinforced rooms are required by law. The infrastructure is there. The protection exists. But in one Jerusalem neighborhood, Ethiopian Jewish families, black Israeli citizens, arrived at a public bomb shelter during the attack and were blocked from entering. An extremist faction reportedly spat on them as they tried to protect their children from Iranian missiles. Let that image sit in your mind. Missiles are falling from the sky. Sirens are screaming. Children are crying. And a black family arrives at the one place designed to save their lives and is met with spit. This wasn't a random act by one disturbed individual. This was a reflection of a system. Because even without the spitting, even without the hatred at the door, Ethiopian Jews in Israel were already at a disadvantage the moment the first siren sounded. Ethiopian Israelis are disproportionately concentrated in older, lower-income neighborhoods, the kind of neighborhoods where buildings were constructed before Israel's safe room mandate in the 1990s. That means many Ethiopian families do not have private bomb shelters in their homes. They depend on public shelters. Public shelters in poorer areas are fewer, older, and less maintained. Meanwhile, wealthier Jewish neighborhoods, overwhelmingly Ashkenazi, have private safe rooms in every unit. The disparity in protection during a missile attack is not accidental. It mirrors the economic disparity that has defined Ethiopian Israeli life since the day they arrived. The numbers have not changed. Ethiopian Israelis still earn roughly 29% less than the general Israeli population. They are still overrepresented in the poorest neighborhoods. Their children are still underrepresented in universities. Police brutality against Ethiopian Israelis continues to generate protests. The same kind of protests that erupted in 2015 and 2019 when videos of Israeli officers beating Ethiopian citizens went viral. And now, in the middle of a war, Ethiopian Israeli soldiers are fighting for the IDF, serving in combat units, putting their lives on the line for a country that will not guarantee them equal access to a bomb shelter. An Ethiopian Israeli soldier summed up the feeling during one of the earlier protests. He said, "We fight all these wars, but this is the real war." He was not talking about Iran, he was talking about being seen as equal in his own country, but it goes even deeper. There are still thousands of Ethiopian Jews stuck in transit camps in Addis Ababa and Gondar, family members of Ethiopian Israelis who have been waiting years for permission to immigrate. Over 1,000 have already been approved under Israel's own criteria, but the process has stalled. And now, with Ethiopia caught in the economic shockwaves of the Iran war, fuel shortages, price spikes, and disrupted supply chains, those families are trapped in worsening conditions. Their relatives in Israel are sheltering from missiles. Their families in Africa are battling an economic crisis caused by the same war, and the government that promised to bring them home has not moved. Now let's cross to the other side of this war. When the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, strikes hit targets across Iran. Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, Karaj. The headlines covered the capital. The headlines covered the supreme leader's assassination. The headlines covered the nuclear facilities. But some of the most devastating strikes landed far from the headlines, in the southern provinces where Afro-Iranian communities have lived for centuries. The city of Minab in Hormozgan province saw one of the single deadliest strikes of the entire war. A girls' elementary school was hit. Over 160 people were killed, many of them children. Hormozgan is the same province where one of the largest concentrations of Afro-Iranians live. The same province that has been systematically neglected by every Iranian government for decades. The same province that does not have adequate hospitals, functioning infrastructure, or reliable access to clean water, even in peacetime. When bombs fall on communities that were already broken, the devastation multiplies. These are people who didn't have bomb shelters to begin with, because the government that was supposed to protect them never invested in their protection. They didn't have hospitals capable of handling mass casualties, because the hospitals were underfunded and understaffed long before the first missile was launched. And when the survivors needed to flee, where would they go? The communities further north carry the same colorism and prejudice that defined Afro-Iranian life before the war. Displacement doesn't erase racism, it concentrates it. Meanwhile, the Iranian regime, even in its weakened post-Khamenei state, continues to operate as though its black population doesn't exist. No official count of Afro-Iranian casualties, no targeted evacuation plans for southern communities, no acknowledgement that the people absorbing some of the worst damage are the same people the government has never acknowledged in the first place. The oil refineries that were struck in Tehran made international news. The military installations that were destroyed led every broadcast. But a girls' school in Minab, in a province full of black Iranians, barely registered, because the lives in those buildings were never part of the story anyone was telling. If this is shaking you, and it should be, join our WhatsApp channel. I go deeper there. The link is in the pinned comment. Tap it now. Now step back and look at both sides together, because the pattern is identical. In Israel, Ethiopian Jews were spat on at the entrance of a bomb shelter. In Iran, Afro-Iranian communities were bombed in provinces without adequate shelters. In Israel, black citizens earn 29% less, live in the poorest neighborhoods, and are policed more aggressively than any other Jewish community. In Iran, black citizens live in the most neglected provinces, hold no political power, and are not even counted in the national census. In Israel, Ethiopian soldiers fight in the Israel Defense Forces, while their families face discrimination at home. In Iran, Afro-Iranian communities sit in strategic military zones, near the Strait of Hormuz, near military installations, absorbing collateral damage from a war they had no part in starting. In Israel, thousands of Ethiopian Jews remain stranded in African transit camps, waiting for a government that promised to bring them home. In Iran, Afro-Iranian activists who tried to document their community's existence were met with surveillance and intimidation. Two countries, two sides of the same war, and the same black people at the bottom of both. This is what I tried to show you in part 1, and now the war has proven it in real time. Neither side has clean hands. Neither side treats its black population with dignity, and both sides are currently asking black American soldiers who serve disproportionately in the US military to fight and die in a conflict between two nations that can't even protect the black people already living within their borders. 7 American soldiers are dead as of this week. 140 have been wounded. Black communities across America are watching gas prices explode, watching domestic programs get cut, watching the war budget swallow every resource that could have been invested at home, and both nations at the center of this conflict treat their own black citizens as invisible. That's not a political opinion. That's a documented fact, and now you've seen it from both sides, before the war and during it. 280,000 of you watched part 1. You saw the history. You saw the evidence. You saw how both Iran and Israel treat black people in peacetime. Now you've seen what happens in wartime, and it's exactly what you'd expect. The same communities that were neglected before the bombs started falling are the ones being destroyed while the world looks the other way. Ethiopian Jews spat on at the door of a bomb shelter. Afro-Iranian children killed in a school the government never invested in. 2 black populations, 1 in each country, both invisible to the powers that govern them. Both expendable in a war neither of them chose, and in the middle of it all, black American soldiers, disproportionately represented in the US military, fight for both of these nations' survival while their own communities at home get nothing in return. I didn't make this video to tell you who's right and who's wrong in this war. I made it because someone has to hold up the mirror, Someone has to ask what happens to the people at the bottom when the bombs start falling. And the answer on both sides is the same thing that always happens. They get forgotten. Not on this channel. Not as long as you're watching. Not as long as you keep sharing. Send this to everyone who watched part 1. Send it to everyone who didn't. Because this isn't just a sequel. This is proof that the pattern we exposed is playing out in real time. Subscribe, hit the like, drop a comment and tell me which side's treatment of black people shocked you more. Part 1 or part 2? I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.